Hey guys, Ronen here. So what's better, buying a truck from a dealership or buying it privately? Well, today we're going to compile a list of all the pros and all the cons of buying from a dealership versus buying a truck privately. Which one's better? I don't know, stay tuned. All right guys, so let's get into it. So the pros and cons of buying from the dealership versus buying privately. So let's start with the dealerships first. Let's talk about the advantages of buying from the dealerships. So let's start buying from the dealership. So number one, coverage and support offered. So when you're buying from a dealership, you definitely get coverage and support. The bigger the dealership, the more they're going to back you up when it comes to warranties, when it comes to if you buy a truck and then within 15 or 20 days, you're going to have all check engine lights. They'll definitely take care of you because you bought it. Hopefully you bought it from a reputable dealer. Number two, the service offered by the dealership. So most big dealerships, they do have their own service department. Hopefully they took care of their truck. They did a proper safety on your truck. So you really have more comfort that a big dealership, that has their own shop has taken care of the safety. Financing. So most of the bigger dealerships, they have their own financing. Although I don't recommend going solely with the dealership's financing. Usually you can make a deal go through because they have their own financing. So for example, if your credit is not that great and then they'll look at the profit margin on the truck. So let's say, they made 10, 15K on the truck, and then they also make on the financing end of it. Even if you don't have the greatest credit, they will tend to push your deal through and make it go through. So another thing I like from the dealerships, and hopefully it's a reputable dealer, that you have options. Right, so you can pick your, hopefully you can pick your color, hopefully you can pick the truck, you can pick the amount. If they have, let's say 2020s or 2019s on the lot, hopefully they have different variations of mileages to choose from. So if you want to get a truck that only has 300,000 or 400,000 miles, and then there are other buyers that want, 500,000 or 600,000 miles on it, then I hope that these dealerships have what they should have, something for you to choose from. So it's not just a particular model. They should have 5 or 6 of those models with different types of mileages. So I do like that about a dealership. So another thing that I really like about the dealerships is that you should have room for negotiations there. So the dealership's profit margins on used trucks are through the roof. Okay, so they're definitely making about 10 to 15 to 20K on a used truck when they're selling it to you at a retail price. So when you're buying from a dealership, you should be negotiating on prices, okay? Don't be afraid to negotiate with them. Let's start talking about cons. So the disadvantages that I don't like about buying through the dealership, well, number one, don't forget you're taking on debt. So when you're buying through the dealership, you're most likely financing your truck and you're taking on debt. And there's obviously interest rates on that debt. So it depends on how high of an interest rate. We talk a lot about financing and truck financing. Today, even if you have good credit, you're getting truck financing. If it's your first truck, anywhere between 9 to 11% is the interest rate charged by finance companies. I've seen them as high as 15 and 18%. Beware and make them compete against one another. Do not just go with the recommended finance company for the dealerships. So in my videos, I talk a lot about financing and interest rates because 90% of the time when I look at lease agreements, our hardworking truck drivers are getting taken advantage of. My heart drops when I see finance agreements and drivers being charged between 12 to 18% interest fees. I have created a link below. Whether you're a Canadian driver or an American driver, with a click of a button, you can make these finance companies compete for your business. It's a simple form that would literally take you 20 to 30 seconds, but you can save thousands of dollars. Once you hit submit, this form is going to go to 4 different lenders. Let them compete for your business. So another thing that I don't like about the dealerships when buying a truck is that if you tell them that you're paying cash, it's as if they don't want to deal with you anymore. It's as if they don't want to sell you the truck, especially in today's hot market. So not only do they want to make money on selling the truck, but they also want to make money on the financing portion of it. They can make just as much, if not double or triple the amount on the financing portion of it than they do on selling the truck. So for example, a dealership might really decrease the prices on used equipment, but you'll only get that kind of price if you finance the truck through them. And then when you finance the truck through them, the rates are through the roof. So they're making their money on the finance portion and less on selling the truck. So I really don't like that. So let's not forget, yes, it's the norm. Obviously, the sales rep needs to make a commission, and basically he makes a commission based on, the higher the price he sells or the higher the profit margin is, or maybe it's the percent of profit margin, the higher his commission is. So trust me, he's there to try to squeeze the most out of you. And I don't like that game, right? So the sales rep, I mean, is all friendly to you. He's basically he's winning over your trust, but at the end of the day, he gets paid based on the higher the value that he sells it to you, the more commission that he gets in his pocket. Another thing I don't like about buying trucks from a dealership is you really don't know how long that truck sat for. So it could sit for 3 months, it could sit for 6 months, it could sit for a year, right? Now, if you knew that that truck was standing for a year, would you really buy it? I mean, I know I wouldn't come close to it. I would not buy a truck that's been standing for 6 months to 9 months, because at the end of the day, I really don't know how it's going to perform once it gets on the highway. I've seen so many stories when drivers come into our fleet, they bought a truck from the dealership, you know, the first trip, all of a sudden their truck, you know, check engine lights, air leaks, the whole bells and whistles, and the guy's coming back from a trip, and then he has to take another week or two off because he has to, you know, put his truck back together and fix all these defects. So I really don't like a parked truck. I really do like, I mean, if a truck, I always ask for the history about the truck, and I would like the truck not sit for that long, so you really don't know what the truth is when you're buying it from the dealerships. Another dealership disadvantage is that the second you buy that truck, I mean, their profit margins are so high through the dealerships, is that the second you buy that truck is worth literally $15,000, $20,000 less than what you bought it for. So if you bought a 3-year-old truck, you know, for $120K, the second it comes off their lot, that thing is worth $100,000. So usually for the first year and a half, you're upside down on your financing agreement, where you owe the banks a lot more than what the truck is worth. So my 2 cents on dealerships, I mean, I really think that the dealerships are overrated. I mean, they were popular 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I think maybe even 20 years ago. But now that we have this digital world, I mean, do we really need all these dealerships for used equipment? I mean, I understand totally for brand new trucks, but for used trucks, you know, why pay them such a high profit margin? I mean, do your research online. I mean, I prefer to buy it privately. You know, I'm gonna go through the advantages and disadvantages of buying it privately, but I think that there's a lot more advantages to buy it privately if you can. Now, obviously you gotta fall into the certain categories in order to be able to buy it privately, but definitely if you have the funds and you don't need the financing, you can really get a sweet deal buying something privately off of somebody. So let's talk about the private pros. So the good things about buying a truck that is privately sold. So we can definitely close the deal quickly when you have somebody who's selling their truck. So for example, if an owner operator here at our company was selling his truck, you know, if you were to come see that truck, then he would be able to basically sign off, give you his ownership, and basically it'll be done, the transaction, within 48 hours. So I like the fact that the deals are closed a lot faster than with these dealerships. I really like the negotiation. So you can really, you can feel somebody if they're desperate, if they're not desperate. You can really feel somebody, you know, especially somebody who's selling it privately, what's his financial situation and can you take advantage of that? So can you lowball him? Can you not lowball him? I love the fact that, you know, when you're buying from somebody privately and if he's still working with the truck, you know, I would much rather have a truck that is working than a truck that is parked. So I love that fact of, you know, buying privately, especially if the person has his truck running and it's not parked. I know that, you know, he goes through scales. I know that, you know, everything's fine with his truck, and if there was a defect on it, he would have to have fixed it because he wouldn't get through the scales. Number 4, I truly believe that when you're buying a truck privately, I think that there's more room for negotiation because there's no huge balloon markup from the dealerships. So for example, let's say you bought an $80,000 truck off of somebody. That same truck, I mean, the person would be willing to sell it to you for $80,000, but at the dealerships, you would most likely be paying $90,000, $95,000 for the exact same truck. So there is no markup, and there's that room for negotiation because there's no markup on that truck from the dealerships. Another thing when buying it privately, I mean, you can really have a normal conversation with the person who has the truck, right? You can ask him, you know, what have you done to the truck? What's new? What's not new? You can actually see it for yourself. He's like, oh, you know, I changed the turbo 4 months ago, or I did a top set, or like he can give you the receipts for, or I just changed the tires, or, you know, the shocks, the brakes, I've done them 3 months ago and 6 months ago, and here's the receipts to them. So I really like that part. You really know what you're getting yourself into when you're buying it privately. The vehicle history, I mean, most times when you're buying a 4-year-old truck, a 3-year-old truck, even a 5-year-old truck, most likely you're buying it from the first owner. Okay, so obviously there are melons out there, right? So melons or lemons? What do they say? Lemons. There are lemons out there. So what happens is when you get a lemon, a brand new unit, right? So the first thing that you do after 1 year, you're like, you know what? Forget it. This is a lemon. Too many problems with this truck. Then you sell it. And it goes through, after 4 or 5 years, it goes through about 3 or 4 hands. Now, a good truck that somebody drove 4 or 5 years usually has a one owner on it. So when I buy a truck that has one owner on it, I know that it's not a lemon, and I know it's a pretty good truck, because otherwise he wouldn't have had it for so long. He would have already been bankrupt if it was a lemon. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk a little bit about disadvantages. So the disadvantages are that you have a lack of protection. So really, after you do the transaction, you can't really go back to anybody. You really probably won't, like, this person is not a reputable dealership where you can you do something about it. So when you buy the truck, you finish the transaction, the truck is yours, and there's really no going back. So when you're buying a truck as is, obviously the person is going to sell you the truck as is, or with a or safety. Most transactions that happen privately are the truck, you buy it as is. So make sure that you take it to a mechanic, a licensed mechanic, so he can give you the scoop on what's going to be needed for safety. So I don't like that part. When you're buying from the dealership, you really get it an all-in package, safety certified, and you get your 30-something days where if anything happens, hopefully the dealership will take care of you. Number 4, there's really no guarantees when buying a truck privately. Can you know that they need a new turbo, or something can happen in the next 30 or 60 days? But I really believe that same thing can happen when you buy the truck from the dealerships. So there's really no guarantees. Also, another big disadvantage when you're buying privately is the finance companies really don't like it. And I hate that. I hate the fact that the finance companies hold back from buying privately. I personally like it more when somebody's buying it privately than buying it through the dealerships, because I don't have to finance, all this profit margins that the dealers have. But the finance companies are they're kind of skeptical and scared of funding a deal that's being sold privately. So really, I mean, if you do have the money and you can close the deal within 24 or 48 hours, the sellers love it, because you're a great customer that can pay everything up front. They don't need to wait 10 or 15 days till you get approved for financing. They don't need to hold a truck for you. I mean, you do the deal, you do the transaction, you give them their $60,000, $70,000 check if you're able to, and you probably got the best deal out there because you're able to negotiate, because you're able to close the deal so fast. So that's another negative. The banks really don't like it. The finance companies really don't like it when buying privately, but there's still a lot of advantages of buying trucks privately. So you should definitely exercise that option. So hopefully you learned something today from this video. Only you can decide what's worth it for you. Do you prefer to buy privately? Do you prefer to buy it from the dealership? Some people want that confidence, and some people want, the backbone of a dealership and a reputable company that they can go back to if something happens. I'm sure hundreds of you have been in a situation where you bought from the dealership, something happened, and they still didn't take care of you. I hear hundreds of reviews, especially on these dealerships. I would definitely do the review on the dealership, to make sure that they are a reputable company that are going to take care of you if something was to go wrong with that truck. Stay tuned for our upcoming videos. We have unbelievable footage coming up. We're taking a brand new unit, and we're going to be showing you what are the repairs for the first 4 years on buying a brand new unit. So we're going to take a couple of our fleet units, and we'll show you the breakdown of repair year over year. So you'll have the repairs on year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4, so you know what you're getting yourself into when you're buying a brand new unit. We're also coming up with videos on fuel consumption comparisons. So we're comparing Volvos to Freightliners to Kenworths. So stay tuned for those videos. And also, don't forget to sign up for the videos for Brian's reviews on trucks. So we're taking multiple trucks and doing full reviews on them. So just like we did the Cascadias, just like we did the Kenworths, there's a lot of more trucks coming up, different years, makes, and models. Stay tuned, sign up to the channel, and ring that bell so when we do release a new video, you get notified of it. I'm Brian, keep the wheels turning, and we'll see you down the road. No, I can't use that line. I'm Ronen, and I'll catch you in the next one.